If you opened your health insurance renewal this year and said, that cannot be right, congratulations, this episode is for you. Hey everybody, and welcome back to Beyond the Bill Number. That's the podcast where we take the tangled web of US legislation and somehow turn it into something that doesn't make your head explode. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Stephen. Today's episode is all about something close to all of your wallets, healthcare legislation in 2026. We're talking affordability battles, federal action and inaction, and what states are actually doing while Washington sort of watches, maybe?
Watches might be incredibly generous there. All right, so before we kick off, I think that we should just talk a little bit about the UK and your access to that sweet, sweet health insurance. So,
yes.
One question I generally have is, we know that you guys have socialized medicine there, you have the coverage, but do you guys ever have to worry about stuff not being covered? I know there's elective plastic surgery and things like that, but what does that look like there?
Okay, so there are a few things that aren't covered under the NHS. So as you say, some elective surgery, particularly cosmetic surgery and things like that, they can sometimes be covered, particularly let's say you have an accident or something and you need plastic surgery. Well, yeah, it'd be covered under those circumstances. But if it's pure vanity, if you like, then no, it's not covered. Also, when it comes to dentistry, there's like dual tracks. So there's NHS dentistry and there's private dentistry. And even if you're on the NHS track, you still have to pay something, but it's very little. Okay. So it's like, if I go and have a checkup, it costs me like, 20 pounds or something. So it's, okay. It's not a huge amount. And even if you get quite serious dental work done, it doesn't cost anywhere near as much as it would cost you in the United States. So a tiny fraction of that. And then the other one is glasses, opticians. Okay. Certain people will get these for free. So if you're under the age of 18, if you're unemployed or retired and things like that, you also get your glasses for free as well. Okay. But generally, most of us pay for them. But apart from that, nothing else is actually charged for. And in fact, there's just no mechanism for paying for things. People have mooted ideas in the past that the NHS should charge people for missed appointments because it's a real problem. When you don't have to pay to go and see the doctor, people will make appointments on spec and then not turn up. And it's, it's a massive pain for a system that's really under stress. So, it sounds fantastic from an American point of view. You don't have to worry about it. You don't have all the complexities of, in plan, out of plan, what's covered, what's not covered. Are they going to take me to the wrong hospital? So if I have an accident, so, all of it, you don't have any of that kind of stuff. But what you do have is a system that is thoroughly broken at the moment. But if you want to get a doctor's appointment, for example, then you have to be on the phone at 8 o'clock in the morning, spamming it, hoping you can get an appointment. Probably not. In a queue of 100 people, maybe you'll get through, maybe you won't. Almost impossible. If you turn up at like the emergency room, you may well be waiting for like 12, 14 hours to see a doctor, maybe sat in the back of an ambulance for hours because the hospital's inundated. If you need an operation, you may have to wait years to get an operation. And also our outcomes are quite poor. So if you get cancer in the UK, you have a much greater chance of dying than if you get cancer, say, in the US or certainly in other European countries. So our system is fundamentally screwed up, basically, and needs serious reform, which is very, very difficult to do. But the issues are very different from the American issues, where a lot of it is about affordability. Can you actually afford to get the treatment you want? And variable outcomes, where different states have wildly different health outcomes from other states. And obviously, if you've got money, you generally get very good outcomes. If you don't have very much money, then your outcomes are absolutely appalling. Again, we don't have quite that sort of split.
Right, and you also have privatized providers, so it's a big thing like it is here, where if you have all the money to cover things, then it doesn't really matter because you have access no matter what. I know this podcaster, Scott Galloway, he lives in the UK. He's American, but he also spends time here, and he doesn't pay for any health insurance at all. And it's because he says that, he has a ton of money. So if something catastrophic does happen and he has to cover out of pocket, he'll just do that. And he also probably only uses these private people because he's super rich. But it's interesting to know that health insurance is problematic everywhere, and everybody thinks that your eyeballs and your teeth aren't part of your body.
It's
and
true.
That's why.
Yeah, it's different. And that happened decades ago. I remember back in the 70s when I was a child, it was the big issue that the NHS was under stress. So they said, well, we can no longer fully cover, dentistry and
Oh,
opticians and things. I mean, one of the reasons why British people traditionally have terrible teeth, and that's
yeah.
like the stereotype of British people, is because during the NHS, getting dental cover was quite difficult, and it still is now as well. So we're just not as obsessed with that. Making things cheap doesn't necessarily mean that people are going to do them more. It's good for them.
Right.
We don't.
Right.
It's just not something you really think about here. If your kid's got wonky teeth, it's like, oh, look, they've got wonky teeth. It's not like, oh, I'm going to go and spend a fortune and get the teeth fixed necessarily.
Yeah, I mean, braces are very expensive.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, here they aren't. I mean, my son got braces and we didn't pay a penny for it
Wow.
because he was under 18, so it
Wow.
didn't cost anything.
Well, that's nice. Luckily, I only needed them for 6 months, so it wasn't too bad for my parents. But what's also crazy here is with our insurance being tied to our employer, obviously you can lose insurance if you lose your job. But one of my
Yeah.
friends is having a
Insane.
kid in tomorrow. She's getting induced,
Mm.
and her company changed their insurance provider, and she wasn't sure if her OB that she had been seeing, and all the people that were going to
Mm.
help her give birth just 15 days into the new year were going to still
What a
be
nightmare.
on her plan and covered, and that she would still be able to go to them. And she was like, at the end of the year, freaking out, like, oh my God, I think I have to find a new doctor. To pay for
Mm.
your birth out of pocket, not covered, is so much money. You're always making your
Mm.
absolute deductible whenever you have birth, and then they'll, cover stuff after that. But I mean, like, people's births can be like line items of $100,000, and, you end up paying 5 grand or
I
whatever.
know.
But it's crazy. And, I never thought about that
It's,
before either, because I
I know.
luckily haven't had anything happen around that. But she was talking about it, and I was like, oh my God, that is
I
stressful.
mean, giving birth is stressful enough.
Right,
You don't want to think, oh my God, I'll be sat there and all of a sudden they say, oh, no longer covered. So this is going to cost you $100,000 or something. Oh my God,
right,
it's so insane.
right.
It's so insane that it happens. I mean, and this is the thing that all foreigners say when they go to America. And we were contemplating moving to America a while ago. And one of the major reasons why we didn't is healthcare. It's just, it would be so prohibitive and just so unpleasant to have to move from a place where you don't worry about the cost of healthcare to where somewhere where you actually have to do, particularly as we were aging, we might
Right.
need more healthcare over the coming years, and we wouldn't have had any health insurance, and you just can't do it. And this thing about it being tied to your job as well is for me is one of the many insane things about how American
Yes.
healthcare works. See, what that should do is it should mean that nobody can quit their job. And therefore, it should mean that there's no entrepreneurship at all, that people just
Right,
can't start small businesses. They can't
right,
go out and innovate because it's too risky because you use your
right.
healthcare. But that's absolutely not the truth, because America is the country of innovation, the country of startups and small businesses, and vastly more than other countries. But again, it's just one of those things I don't understand. I don't understand why people are willing to take that risk when it means you lose your healthcare.
It's funny because people talk so much about that, and they're like, oh, if I didn't have to have health insurance, I would
Yeah,
be an artist, or I would do this, or I would do that. And instead, I
absolutely.
have to have this job. But then you're saying, we do have so much entrepreneurship here. And I think it'll be interesting to see years from now what we're here to talk about today does, because a lot of these people are able to get health insurance coverage. It's not a completely unreasonable cost. I grew up
Mm.
with entrepreneur parents. We had to buy insurance in the
Mm.
marketplace as well. It was super
Yeah.
expensive. It
Mm.
was not so crazy. It still is pretty crazy and way crazier than it was under Obamacare or the ACA. But let's get into it and start with this
Yeah.
elephant in the room, HR 1, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act that we talked about last year. It's called the One Big Ugly
Mm.
Bill by a lot of people now. But
Yeah.
the name alone sounds like something that Congress gave a unicorn-shaped tax break just to spice up the legislative calendar.
Yeah, right. Yeah, despite the name actually being formally dropped in committee, which is one of those weird things that just happened about the bill. Chuck Schumer's grand victory when it came to that bill was to get them to drop the name, even though everyone carries on using it as well. So there you
Yeah.
go. Well done, Democrats, for that one. But yeah, obviously it's an example of Donald Trump's genius for sort of marketing and self promotion and so on. That this bill became this emblematic thing because he decided that it should be called the One Big Beautiful Bill. But healthcare was one of the most politically charged parts of this massive, massive omnibus bill that covered a whole range of different things. It covered all sorts of different stuff, like it reorganized taxation, federal spending, Medicaid, financing, compliance requirements. It was generally a huge recalibration of federal priorities. And if you want to see it all side by side, of course, pull it up on Bill Track 50 and you can have a look at the whole thing, look at our summary of it. The bill page shows you every title change, every markup version. I mean, good luck making sense of it, of course, because it is absolutely massive.
Yes, I wrote the blog on this last year, and I regretted choosing that bill to write the blog on almost immediately.
Yeah.
Okay, so fine. What did the healthcare pieces of the One Big Beautiful Bill do?
Well, at its core, then, the OBBB trimmed federal Medicaid support by something like over $1 trillion over a decade. And it let the enhanced ACA, the Affordable Care Act premium tax credits expire at the end of 2025. Analysts project that because of the combination of subsidy expiration and reduced federal backing, many people's costs are rising, often hundreds of dollars per month for a typical middle-income family. That's because insurers have less federal support to underwrite risks, so premiums and network narrowness tends to go up.
Okay. Well, that is part of the big debate, right? Democrats say that without these subsidies and additional supports, people simply just can't afford coverage.
Exactly. So Democrats argue that affordability only happens if the federal government puts serious money behind it and keeps it there as well. Republicans have a different view. They think cutting federal spending and letting markets compete will pressure costs downwards, which is obviously a classic market forces argument. So the same set of facts turns into freedom of markets versus federal guarantee, depending on who you are.
Yeah, I know that healthcare costs notoriously like to go down, so I think that works.
They do, always happens.
All right, so this brings us to this real world stuff. Because while Congress was arguing and didn't extend these enhanced subsidies, this was the big reason for the government shutdown. That was the longest one in history last year. Millions of Americans started seeing this sticker shock when they shopped for plans for 2026. So this was happening at the end of last year. Premiums are expected to rise over 100% on average for people. There's people that were reporting that they used to pay $200 a month. Now it's $1,000. I mean, these are people who really relied on these subsidies and needed healthcare. This is absolutely not pocket change.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. In fact, roughly 22 million people who get those subsidies could see their premiums jump dramatically because they vanished at the end of last year. And there are some real signs of that in states like Pennsylvania, where you have almost a 22% rise in approved premiums for exchanges there. So, I mean, it's worth just looking at it slightly broader than that. This isn't just about these subsidies disappearing. It's about a whole range of different things. You've effectively got this perfect storm that healthcare costs are rising dramatically all over the world. And that's the key problem with the British system, in that it's just so much more expensive to treat people properly these days than it used to be. There are a lot more drugs, there are a lot more, all of the various complicated procedures and things. It all costs a lot more money. And that's true in the US as it in America. So even if those subsidies have stayed in place, then you would have seen premiums increase possibly by 5-10% just on the basis of the fact that everything's getting more expensive. But then you add in this premium problem, and that's where you get these huge rises.
Right. And one of the biggest issues, and something that's known here in the US, is if you just pay out of pocket, you can often pay a lot less for something than you even would be paying with insurance. I have pretty good insurance, and I was getting some blood work done, and they were like, with your insurance, we estimate that you'll pay between $500 and $900 because I didn't get close to my deductible last year. But if I paid out of pocket, $250. And I was like, well, heck to my insurance, I'll just pay the $250. I know. And so one of the biggest problems with this is that so many people just assume that people won't sign up for health insurance because a lot of us have health insurance for catastrophic coverage. You're not necessarily, checking if you got a thyroid problem or, and if you are somebody with chronic health stuff, it's obviously very important to have insurance, but most people don't fall in that category. So then people will only need catastrophic coverage, which we have a huge medical debt crisis here. People will end up being there. It's just kind of the self-fulfilling prophecy. Let's talk about the legislative response heading into 2026.
Well, at the beginning of the year, the House passed a bill that would extend those Obamacare premium subsidies in full for 3 years. The vote went 230 to 196. So 17 Republicans joined all House Democrats to support this. Very, very unusual and a major challenge to the authority of the president, really. Many of those Republicans are from swing districts who are facing pressure from constituents, seeing their rate spike, and are already looking ahead to future elections.
That is a huge deal. But I know that this hasn't cleared the Senate yet.
Right. It hasn't passed the Senate, and most political watchers think it will fail there because a similar extension was rejected just last month. The Senate is a very different place to the House. Plus, President Trump has said that even if it did manage to get all the way through this, he might veto the bill anyway because he prefers health savings accounts or other approaches instead of subsidizing insurance through the ACA marketplaces.
Yeah, and the interesting thing with this HSA payment, so many people were talking about it when it was voted down at the end of last year, and it was so interesting to hear people talk about it because I was like, you don't understand anything about health insurance or anything about coverage or anything about how any of this works. And somebody that I know had posted, the Democrats just voted to not give you money so that you can choose your own insurance. And and I was just like, okay, one, sir, you can't use the HSA to pay for the insurance coverage, so that doesn't help you there. And two, you can only use HSA money if you have something that you're trying to get treatment for, and it's a medical expense. So that is not helping anybody in this situation, and pay a little bit more attention, please. But
yes,
this is also like Congress saying, we see the problem, but then the rest of the government is kind of saying, nah.
Yes, it is. It is interesting, isn't it? And it's a political problem. You've got people who are up for re-election and know this is going to really hurt them because, of course, it is, because it's terrible, and what's happening is terrible for their constituents. And so, let's not be too cynical here. Maybe they are just talking to their constituents, going, "This is terrible for my constituents that I represent. I want to do the best for them." Even the Republicans, I want to do the best for my constituents, so I really want to change this. And then you've got people who don't have that kind of accountability, who are just coming at it from a much more ideological point of view. We do not like socialized medicine. We do not like the government subsidizing people in this way. It should be the markets. The market should determine everything. And the people who are going to suffer at the end of the day when they can't agree are, of course, those people who are going to see these massive spikes in their premiums, really.
Yes, and something else that I don't think people realize is that our companies pay money for us to have insurance, and you oftentimes still have to pay for your insurance coverage, even though you have a policy through your company. And all of that money can just go into a different area that can do things. We're still paying for stuff no matter what. And I just don't think people understand, and it's whatever. It is what it is.
Yeah.
But.
Well, then they shouldn't have to, though. And this is the tragedy here. So here, because our health service is in such a terrible state, one of the answers that politicians would often say is we need more choice. We need to introduce more choice. We need more, so you can choose which hospital you want to go to. You can choose this. You can choose your doctor who's going to perform the surgery or whatever. To which I go, I don't want to choose that. I'm not qualified to decide is one hospital better than another, is one doctor better than another. And it's terrifying because I want all hospitals to be fantastic and all doctors to be competent. I don't want to think, oh my God, I'm about to go under the knife. Have I chosen the wrong doctor?
Right.
No, I want them all to be fantastic. And it's just one of those areas where you don't want choice. You don't need choice. All you want is to say, I'm sick. Somebody treat me. Somebody knows what they're doing and is professional to treat me. And you don't want to have to just funnel money into all these middlemen and the management and all of those different layers and all of the different things where everybody just taking money out of it.
Yes.
I mean, they do say that a good analysis of the American healthcare system says that you pay twice as much for your healthcare as anybody else. So just imagine what you could do if you paid the same amount, but it all went to healthcare instead of actually all these middlemen. Imagine how fantastic your health system would be and how great all of your health outcomes would be for everybody, even poor people.
Right, and I mean, one of the easiest things to talk about there is when we talk about insulin and how much you have to pay for insulin here versus how much it costs to manufacture insulin. And if we all lived in a world where instead of making $700 off somebody needing insulin, then we would all probably be in a better world. And that's still capitalism. You're still, tripling your money or whatever, but you don't need a 7,000x your money.
Absolutely.
But that can only exist somewhere like the US. So.
And this is something where everyone agrees. It's one of those rare things about about healthcare, everyone agrees that the prices for drugs in America are ridiculous and they need to come down. I don't really understand why it's so difficult to bring them down, but it's got to be because it's the market, So in the UK, we have one organization that negotiates on behalf of the NHS for drug prices. It has an enormous amount of power it can wield, and so we get drugs at a reasonable price. That's obviously what you need there as well. But I was under the impression that Trump had brought drugs prices down by 1,000% though. So
yeah, but when they're up 7,000% of what they should be, that's not that helpful.
Yes, that's sort of Trump mathematics. So Trump's comments on this, of course, underscore that the White House isn't fully on board with extending the subsidies as written, at least not without changes.
Okay, that's the federal scene. Let's zoom in on the state responses, because we've talked on the show before about how when Washington can't act, usually the states decide, all right, I guess I'll jump in.
Yes, and with good reason. So Colorado is notable here because they really got ahead of this. They had HB 1006, and it's genuinely one of the most expansive state healthcare affordability bills in the country this year. The bill actually went into force on the 1st of January, and it essentially says if federal enhanced tax credits don't get extended for 2026, Colorado will fund its own premium support and reinsurance up to $100 million to hold down costs for exchange customers. It's got reporting requirements, multilingual community engagement language, and even a built-in trigger mechanism. That's the kind of parallel system build out you'll usually only see in textbooks.
Well, here we are in Colorado living the good life, I guess.
Absolutely.
This sounds almost like state level safety net for a federal subsidy failure.
Exactly. And you might say, particularly if you live in Colorado and pay state taxes there, why should we be spending our tax money that should be going to other things on effectively bailing out this federal subsidy failure? But there you go. Other states are trying smaller things, tweaks to premium tax structures, targeted tax credits for long-term care insurance or employer contributions, even premium tax base changes. But none of them are as structurally robust as Colorado's, and most still remained in committee in 2025 and haven't actually yet passed or come into force. If you pull up your Bill Track 50 state search and sort by healthcare affordability, you'll see a sea of bills with modest tweaks and only a handful that have actually hit that enacted status.
All right, so the big picture here is Congress might extend subsidies at the federal level, but that's going to be a tough road. Meanwhile, Colorado's doing a big state build out, and the rest of the states are kind of tinkering in the margins.
Yeah, you could say that. You could say that Colorado didn't wait for Washington. And for everyone else, they're playing a bit of catch up. So a few bills, you've got Arkansas's premium tax credit elimination, Oklahoma's tax-based modernization, or Connecticut, Massachusetts tax credits for long-term care. They all show the appetite, but they're all fairly small compared to what analysts think is actually needed.
Okay, so let's end with a look forward. What does this mean for this year, for 2026?
Well, it means a lot of people are watching the premium notices that just started landing, and those figures will drive political sentiment in the 2026 midterms and beyond. If subsidies don't get extended and the premiums really do go up and stay up, Democrats will blame Republicans for blocking relief. If they do get extended, Republicans might claim validation for market-centric approaches. And states will increasingly be part of the answer because many folks will see that only their governor or legislature is actually acting right now.
All right, so healthcare affordability, not exactly a dry policy wonk topic when it affects millions of budgets and how we're all going to be living this year. And if you want to dig deeper into the bills that we talked about today, federally and all 50 states, hit up BillTrack50.com and check out the tracking tools that make it easier for you to follow this chaos. You can also check out this blog on BillTrack50.com.
Yes, you can indeed. So that's it for this episode of Beyond the Bill Number. Stay curious, stay proactive, and remember, legislation might be messy, but it affects the real world every day.
And don't forget to like, subscribe, and give us your input. Until next time, keep looking beyond that bill number.